All right. Hey, by the way, what's the weather like outside that window,
It
David?
is it is cold.
I saw something
It,
about 31 degrees to us
that's
Californians.
right
That
around there,
yeah, to
which is
Californians it's like deep freeze. You're
which
dead.
is actually, a little above average for December in Vermilion, South Dakota.
Well, that's why I asked. Thanks for identifying your locale. It's fascinating. David Holdhuson is Director of Choral Activities, and the Douglas and Susan Tuve, am I pronouncing that?
Tuvey.
Tuvey, thank you. The Douglas and Susan Tuvey Distinguished Professor of Choral Music at the University of South Dakota in Vermilion, South Dakota, which is close to Sioux Falls. I had a friend who played bassoon with the Sioux Falls
Oh,
Symphony,
really?
and then got himself a job in Montreal. So onward and upward.
Moving up.
And it's such a fascinating little tiny southeastern corner of little chunk at the very bottom of the state of South Dakota. It's really quite amazing where you are, the location where,
That's
and the rivers, the Missouri and the falls, all the rest of it's fabulous. But we are here to talk about a Navona Records 2000, I think 2017, right? Because it kind of covers through 2016. Do you remember?
It came out in the fall of 2016, October of
Fall. Okay.
2016.
It's a Navona Records release of fall of 2016. Thank you. A compilation of performances by the chamber choir, which is the chamber singers, which are the elite of the vocal performers in your department. And we'll talk about that. I want you to tell me
Okay.
how your department works, what's going on there. But this is the chamber singers, University of South Dakota chamber singers. It's kind of a compilation of pieces over, I think, from 2014 to 2016, something like
That's
that.
correct.
About I don't know, 18 songs.
Hmm.
And as I told you off camera, once again, I have just had my brains blown out by the extraordinary quality of result that you have achieved. There are reasons that we'll talk about. I finally found the cipher, the code that allowed me to understand why the CD is so brilliant. There are many, many spirituals and arrangements of spirituals on this CD, and it just so happens that David Holdhuson is probably the living encyclopedia based on your was that your PhD degree work on African
It
American
actually
spirituals?
wasn't. It was just some research that I did after I started. Well, I started it while I was doing my doctorate as in just kind of a class, and then I continued on after I left there and did additional work on it after
Well,
that.
while we're on it, any reason why? What is it about African American spirituals that caught your attention or your mind or your intellect or
I've
what?
just always loved them. I love the emotion of them, and I think that's where it really gets. You can get the great excitement and then the great despair from these pieces, and the background story of what the history of these songs and where they came from and what made each song unique, and then the back stories and the codes within them, and just the more that I looked at them, the more I studied them, just the more excited and interested I got in the performance of those pieces, and trying to educate people on what wonderful music it actually is.
Well, I can tell you that this is probably this CD. It's called "Let Me Fly," with so many spirituals on it. I was just really genuinely shocked with delight. So you are a master, especially at communicating character and characterization. We've had that talk. I'm gonna let
Yep.
you yak about it in a bit. Let me scratch my nose here. But that was really that really has been a revelation to me, and you are really stunning. And then there's the other thing about choral conducting. This is what I hear. Again, it's a choir. I suppose it may have changed configuration over some of those years. Does that happen dramatically, or do these, because they come from all over the university?
Right.
They're not just music majors. Go ahead.
Right.
Give me the story about how the chamber singers works and has
So
worked.
So we have three choirs at USD, and this is the top audition. We have two auditions. We have a larger concert choir of about 65 or so, and then this group is about 40 singers. And the auditions we do right at the beginning of the school year, so there is turnover every year because it's a college, so people are graduating and moving on with their lives. So it really depends on year to year. It goes in cycles. Some years I'll have more returning, some years less, and it just really like any school setting, you're going to go through that turnover. But this choir, like I said, auditioned every year, and even the students who are in it year to year have to re-audition. So membership is not guaranteed, although most of them continue on every year. But it is a new choir every year as we move forward, and we just pick up where we left off and try to build on the year prior as we move forward.
Boy, David just put that in the most discreet manner. I would be pulling my hair out and having nervous breakdowns annually because of that turnover, where you've just spent a year creating a sound, a color, a blend, and then, son of a gun, you got to start start all over again at the beginning. So this is another kudo to you about the. I listened to a CD that covers a couple years. At least a little bit of, and I think I heard a little bit of difference in the sound. You know what I mean? I think maybe,
yep.
But the standard of performance is top drawer consistently. And what is it? Of course, it's intonation. Stunning intonation. Blend, the most gorgeous blend. You also keeping control. And I'm an instrumental conductor, so I hope I'm not getting myself into deep water here. But the idea of controlling, especially the high sounds, I was so impressed with the sopranos. It's a gorgeous, I want to say white sound. It's so clean. It's so transparent throughout these 2 years even. You want to just talk to that about these students?
I think what you're just saying is actually probably one of the hardest things about what I do here, and what any choral conductor does is trying to get that beautiful, warm, clear sound, especially in the high parts, but also making sure that the singers are producing it in a healthy manner, and that you can make sure that they are giving you all of the colors and things that are important to the singing, but not doing anything to damage their voice or damage the work that they're doing in the voice studios. And I think that's a thing that I'm proud of what we've been able to accomplish here with especially the sopranos in this choir over this time period.
Yeah, and by the way, you pointed out something so important, and it's the way things have changed, I think. I've seen it, for example, at the Music Academy of the West here in Santa Barbara with young professional instrumental musicians. This consciousness of good health, of watching your body, of how important the body is, especially, of course, a singer, and taking good care of the body. I do seem to recall in my youth there were times when there was not so much consciousness about this, and many people's voices and maybe even playing capability, let's say on violin, were harmed, including their health.
Absolutely.
So this is great consciousness raising. Let Me Fly, again, is the name of the CD. It's your second, I think, if I see correctly on the website.
First on the Dakota records, but our second CD. Yeah.
Yeah, and let's see. We've talked about your research interests. What is the secret about getting, forgive us, but shall we say, non-African Americans to somehow let loose of whatever it is in order to
I think there are two things that I try to get across with my students. One is I really do find it important that they sing in the dialect of what the performer would be, and that's, we can talk about that specifically with the spiritual, but in anything that we do. For example, the Wyndham on this CD, I want to get that color of the shape note singing. So I really think that's a key, because it gets them out of the box of just singing, here are the notes on the page, this is how I'm taught to sing, this is the note that I will produce, and it puts them more into we called it character early, let's say the character of the people who might be originally singing this type of music. So I think that's one really important aspect. The other is just to find the emotional connection. The singers have to find that emotional connection. They need to find the joy when it's joyful. They need to find the deep sorrow if it's a sorrowful piece, or the agony or the celebration or whatever it is. And whether that is specific to the music or something within the singer themselves that can bring that energy, I think those are probably the two things that I spend the most time in order to develop that character, is the dialect or the character sound, and then finding that personal connection.
And you mentioned Wyndham on the CD, and by the way, what you have just described sticks out like big, fat, juicy, yummy color lumps on this CD. What I'm getting at, that was a horrible way of describing it, but the tremendous characterizations. And Wyndham, for example, I think I mentioned to you, I thought Appalachia right away. I mean, am I anywhere close? I mean, something about that.
Oh yeah, it's an old early English in that shape note style, and so in going for the shape note is that exactly Appalachian singing, and it's that bright and where the intonation comes in, and you really bring those fifths out, and it's very exciting music to sing.
It is, and it would be just like singing a work in French. I mean, the same study
absolutely.
is required. Or German, or whatever.
You would definitely not sing a piece in French the same way you would sing something in Russian or in German or in English. You've got to embrace the character in which the music was written.
And I like the way this is really an American album. Am I okay on that? I can't. I'm just kind of looking at it. It is.
That was my intention. Yep.
Okay.
It's all either American music or modern American composers.
And American period, as we've just discussed. To get those styles from the 19th century, let's say, for example, and so on. Very, very interesting CD, the way you put this CD together. Now I'm gonna, this is gonna be very hard, but it has been a mystery for me as an instrumental person, as an orchestra conductor over the years. When I have seen, and I've known one or two really brilliant people, and by the way, I'm very glad to meet you.
You as well.
What are these secrets? We've discussed how there's a turnover. I've seen a high school colleague of mine, a chord director, who has had the same problem, and somehow transforms raw voices, to use an inappropriate word, into glory and gold and the so-called silk purse. What is it? Is it a psychological thing? What? How? Tell me the secret.
For me, I don't know if this is the secret, but for me, I want my choir to be more than 40 singers that come in the room 3 times a week for an hour. I want it to be an ensemble that we talk a lot about family, and that's what I think that they build that, and then that carries from year to year, regardless of whether people carry from year to year. We have that foundation built on the shoulders of our past people, and we are trying to build that for the future, those shoulders for the future as we go forward. And my hope is that by building that family atmosphere, they want to be there for each other. They want to be the best they can be for one another, not for themselves, not for me, but for the collective. And I think that the more bonded that the group is, the more willing they are to experiment with sounds, or to experiment with, or to work together to create the sounds in sectionals, in outside rehearsals besides what we do. If they just come into the room, do their thing, and leave, and there's not that commitment to each other, you can still get good sound, but you lose some of the passion. That I guess that's my secret. I don't know if that's a big secret, but that's what I think is important.
And you have just exactly described the importance of the arts in every human being's life, coming together and creating as a collective a work of beautiful art, working together to transcend the everyday, the humdrum. So what you've just described is why we spend our lives doing this and influencing.
I couldn't agree more.
And you mentioned about people coming and singing and moving on, and we've described that this superb chamber choir is made up of, engineering majors as well as music majors and whatever from the whole campus. But that kind of collegiality also, and diversity of contact. In other words, the arts, are the magic bullet for mankind. I don't understand.
I agree.
I just don't understand what's the big deal. This is what will save us, art.
I agree.
And it's not being pompous. It's just that again, as you've just so beautifully described, it's how human beings are brought together for a greater purpose. In music. Okay, enough of that. Enough of that stuff. So that's your tricks. Okay, let's see. I'm just running down my list here, and we talked about hanging on to singers. I wanted to talk to you about one very specific composer that you have introduced me to. We spoke about it a little earlier on Let Me Fly. I think 3 pieces of his. This man is, I'm hunting for his name right now. Hang on a second. Let me pull it here. Johnny Priano. Have I got it right?
Priano, yep.
Priano, okay. From Pennsylvania. He teaches high school and intermediate level school, whatever that is. It used to be called junior high school in my youth. And I've been to his website. I was so taken by these 3 pieces. Tell me what you can about this young, and he is young, composer, this absolutely brilliant choral composer.
I think the world of Johnny and his music. He has a lot to say, and I think he's just beginning to come into his own. So we kind of got involved with him. It was in 2010. He had a 9/10-ish. He had his first piece published, and it was called Vieni nel mio cuore. And I came across it at one of the store managers for a music store in the area gave me a CD of things he thought I might like, and it was on there, and I listened to about 30 seconds of it and said, this is on my program. And then the other 5 minutes that came after it were excellent. But I loved it. I fell in love with it. And so we were one of the first groups that performed it because it was brand new that year. And we recorded it and we put it up on YouTube, and we were like the second or third choir to put it up on YouTube. And Johnny came across it on YouTube and sent a note in the comments about what a great performance he thought it was and how much he enjoyed it and wanted to get in touch with the director and talk to someone. And so at that time the page was managed by one of my students, and so the next day she came running up to me and said, Johnny posted to our page and he loves it and he wants to talk to you. And so he and I communicated a little bit. A couple of years later, he had another published piece that we did. We did the same thing. We recorded it, we put it up there, and sent him a recording, and he, again, loved it. And after our conversations, he said to me, I really like what you have. I have a lot of music that I would like to get out there. I'd be happy to share these pieces with you. All I want is a good quality recording so that I can try to get these published and share my music with more of the world. So since then, and that was about 2012, he has given us a new piece of music that we have recorded and given to him. Several have been published, and in the last couple of years, he is now writing specifically for us. This is a piece I wrote with you in mind, instead of this is a piece I wrote, is this something that you would like to do? He is writing things for us directly, and it's just been a wonderful relationship. I love his music. He is a wonderful human being, and I think the more people will get to hear his music and the more that they look into what he has to say as a composer, the more he will be able to share his gift with choral musicians and listeners throughout the world. I think so much of Johnny and the music that he writes. It's so passion-filled, and it always has a message, and it's creative, and it's got excellent harmonic development, but at the same time has themes and melodies that you know where he's going with it. It's not harmony for harmony's sake. It's harmony that supports what he's trying to do musically, and I love it, and our choir looks forward every year to seeing what his piece is going to be, and the conversations that we have via Skype and other means in preparation for learning it.
And that's the genius of composers who work with text.
Yes, absolutely.
He is a genius at understanding text and communicating those words on a page in visual and sonic imagery. It's just absolutely beautiful music making. I'm so glad that you've told me a little about this man. I think that's worth his 3 pieces. Psalm 23 is absolutely, breathtaking. It's so gorgeous.
And that piece was written for the death of his grandfather, and we were so touched that he trusted us with that piece after he wrote it. Just it is a stunningly beautiful piece of music.
And I'm just going to want to dance down a little bit some of the pieces on the program while we kind of wind it down, because some really stick out. For example, the first piece on the CD, "Go Tell It on the Mountain." I have never heard such an amazing, fascinating arrangement.
It is a wonderful arrangement. Stacey Gibbs, he just did a fantastic job setting it, and it's a lot of fun to sing.
And it's tricky.
Yeah,
which makes it far more interesting as well. But that really was something. And I love your, I love it anyway. But when you can, which you do so beautifully with choral sound, these beautiful, spacious, expansive phrases. I love it when the bar line disappears. I mean, that is the secret. Lingering phrases, they're so delicious, and also the way you clearly understand and can balance, in terms of intonation, these exquisite dissonances that I hear on this CD. Such beautiful work on your part. It's just beautiful vocal tuning.
Thank you very much.
Someplace. Now I've got about 5 stars before Someplace. This is Jocelyn Hagan with 2 lovely women soloists from your chamber choir. But tell me a little something about that piece, if you will, or your own impression.
This was a commission of ours, and we got it, and we learned it, and this is kind of an interesting story, and we prepared it, and we actually performed it in public once, leading up to our tour and the actual premiere. And then within a day or 2 after performing, we had a Skype conference with Jocelyn, and she listened to it, and she said, you sang exactly what's on the page, but let me tell you, this is my vision. And at that point, that's when the vocal percussion was added to it, and that is all
I wanted to ask.
Percussion by Eldon Warner, who was a student here for that. That's all his ad-libbed vocal percussion based on feedback that Jocelyn gave us in our discussion. And then so we had this conversation. We wound up picking up the tempo from what the original marking was to get this, and the piece just became much more magical once all of that happened. It's interesting, you learn a piece the way it is written on a page, but then you talk to the composer, and the composer really fills you in on what their vision was. And all of a sudden, the piece made complete sense. It was like a light came on. The choir enjoyed it more. They sang it with more energy, and it was missing that one, the vocal percussion aspect of it that was not written in. And I think she was kind of embarrassed to say, this is what I want, but it made all the difference in the piece, and it's just such an interesting piece of music.
It is, and whatever vocal percussion is, I would love to see it. I'm imagining snap, pops, cracks, microphones,
that
stuff,
kind of thing,
all that kind of stuff.
With the mouth
but really expert
he is
playing. It's not easy. Phenomenal. I'm sure it's not easy. But also, what a transformative color. Again, I keep using that word, but what a delicious color and a rhythmic pulse. All of a sudden, the piece really dances. Good. I'm glad I asked this, because the vocal percussion, again, that alone, I don't think I've ever heard anything like that, to be honest with you.
There's not a lot of, let's call it, traditional choral music that utilizes it. It's more of a vocal jazz style instrument, but it fits perfectly in this piece, and like I said, it just made it sparkle once it was added.
And I have a tremendous respect for Shenandoah.
You can't go wrong with that.
Well, what I mean by it, I'm leading up to something here, is, to me, it's practically sacrosanct. As I've gotten older, as I've heard it so many times in so many arrangements, and also heard performances of all kinds and sorts, I long, if you'll forgive that, borrowing that word, I long for conductors and ensembles that understand the heart of this great American masterpiece.
Yes.
And you got it, and this James Erb arrangement is
it's stunning.
Absolutely gorgeous. But it is your doing as well as per the earlier, as per what Jocelyn said. It's all, you're a PhD. You know how to make all that stuff on paper work. but it's the heart and soul that is the difference, and the instinct and the intellect and intuition and all the rest of it. So you have it. I am so impressed with your conducting and with the results you get there. But Shenandoah was great, and then Elijah Rock, and I saw it coming. I remember whatever it was, 3 months ago when it was coming. I was listening to the CD. I thought. Because I hadn't yet understood that this is your authoritative area. This arrangement by Moses Hogan is also just absolutely unique. So you really know how to pick fascinating arrangements. You want to tell me anything about that? It's very tricky.
Well, yes, very rhythmic, and making sure that all of the different parts line up together. It takes a little bit of effort on the choir's have to just make sure that they are learning the precision, but still not being, let's say, tied to the rhythm. They've still got to feel the rhythm, but also be precise with the rhythm. That's kind of counterintuitive.
It's almost oxymoronic, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I think the key to the spiritual is finding arrangements that are interesting to perform, but still have connection to the original music that's passed down generationally and orally from the time. And I think Moses Hogan is just a master at it. So it's easier to do a good recording, make a good production, when you have a masterful arranger like Moses was.
Or Norman Luboff.
Exactly.
I mean, that is the class.
Or
I mean his Norman Luboff's classic arrangement of Dixie. It's
yes.
So famous. But I've heard it performed with understanding, and I've heard it performed with no understanding, and you know what I mean, and because it too is it's practically a part of the American spirit.
Mm-hmm.
That tune, and talk about subtext and
yes.
Longing and yearning and loss. I mean, it's such a beautiful arrangement, and again, just exquisite performance standards.
Thank you.
And I know that I think you've mentioned somewhere, I know what one of the titles was. I mean, you write and you do workshops and so on, I presume, from what I've seen of your
yes.
published works. How do you, I guess what I'm trying to say is, how do you walk into a room of singers and communicate? And you're doing a workshop somewhere. You've never seen them before. They've never seen
right.
you before. You walk in. How do you begin that engagement that is going to take is going to take those people and change their lives because of who you are and what you're going to show them about themselves?
I try to approach them the same way that I approach my own choir. I go in, I might only have them for a half a day or whatever, but in this time that we're together, we're going to make music as a family, and that means more than singing the right notes and the right rhythms. We're going to feel and express and share our deepest emotions with each other, so that we can share it with the audience. And the more that I can get that and get them out of especially if it's an honor choir type thing where people you get in there and they have that initial reaction of, I have to be in here and I have to prove to everybody that I'm in here. Mm-hmm. We've got to cut through that. Everybody in the room belongs, and we are only going to be as great as we can be together. And that's what I try to get with any choir I work with, is that unity of, we're working together to create something bigger than us.
Once again, and we were there a few minutes ago as well, but this is like waving the standard of our profession, but also, and I mean the arts in general, not just
right.
music, but also there has been a transformation, I believe, in the past 30, 40 years about what you people in charge. You are the people that have the responsibility to transform or not
right.
people's experience. And I think what I'm seeing, I'm getting old now. How many years have I got? Maybe 12. I'm seeing a younger generation of young professional musicians at the college level and throughout, even orchestras and so on. The attitude is just completely different, and it is that sort of embracing and making and collegiality and relishing diversity, all that stuff. So we are good. Okay, hang on. What are we doing? Oh, we're almost out of time here. Let's see. First, I'm going to ask you let me make sure in Flanders Fields is another one, lovely, beautiful arrangement. There is a river, another Johnny Prieno.
Yep.
Just a beautiful piece. The CD is just chock-a-block. What have I forgotten to speak to or address that you are dying to tell my viewers?
I think you covered a lot of things. Everything. I'm looking at the CD myself now to see if there's anything. I think that you've hit a lot of things. I think the country dances, the word swingle. Again, it's a fun piece, but it's another one of those that you have to. I think that if you get the color and the style of that, you're going to enjoy. And then my favorite piece. Is probably the O Day Full of Grace, and that is got a lot of emotional connection for our ensemble as well. When I started here 12 years ago now, I decided that I wanted to take some tradition from my background, and we were going to have a signature piece, and so I chose that as what was going to be our signature piece. And so every year since I came, we've closed our piece with that. And I think it's such a beautiful piece of music. The chorale, the simpleness of the chorale melody, and all of the creative things that Chris Johnson does with the melody as he goes through, and on top, and then to have the message of that. We talk a lot about the end as it builds to the end, what I have lovingly called the gates of heaven chord, the moment at the end before the last there we shall walk in endless light, where the choir opens up, builds up to this note, the basses drop out, and you just get this wonderful ringing, warm chord. That we talk about every year when I start to get them to buy into the music, that chord is you standing on the gates, you're standing at the gates and them opening and welcoming you. That piece is one of my all-time favorite pieces, and it has just become more and more meaningful every year that I get to do it with these students, and then to see them grow with it over their time, and we get to that last performance, and all of a sudden they realize that this is them, that it's part of them, and then to see our alumni come back and be so excited to hear it every year. It's just a really emotional and exciting piece of music that has really come to mean a lot to our choir and to me personally.
Well, and I know this very well from my friend Phyllis Zimmerman, who has since passed, but here in Santa Barbara, the high school choir director, who was so stunningly brilliant in the very same way. They too, she had an adult choir, everything from memory. The repertoire was entirely from memory. And they also, it's a lovely tradition, especially in choral music, to have some kind of signature end of the evening song. And I don't remember really what it was, an Irish tune, I think something, a farewell, have a pleasant evening or something like that. But again, when you have a highly intelligent conductor, I'm looking right at you, and Phyllis Zimmerman was the same. It's, again, you know what I'm trying to say, the transformative nature, and also you have just described once again community.
Absolutely.
That tune stays with them for the rest of their lives, and they have fond memories. Okay, we're going to have to end it now. Let's get up to the top. David Holdhuson, Director of Choral Activities at the University of South Dakota. What a pleasure to finally meet you and really have a good jaw with you about this incredible CD, your second with the University of South Dakota Chamber Singers, Let Me Fly. It's a beauty. It's put out by Navona, part of the wonderful Parma family again. But this CD, again, I think 18 songs, including some African American spirituals, performed with exquisite certainty. How's that? Something like that. Anyway, magnificent, and as I've described, I always look for that when I really know I have a conductor in my sights when I hear such great music making. Many thanks. I think we've touched everything. I hope we'll get a chance to talk again.
Me as well.
All right. We'll see you. Thanks, David.
Thank you.